Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of 247 DIY. We're right back here with the 2002 WRX, picking up where we left off last time, where we installed the MooreSport rear trailing arms, the PowerFlex rear differential outrigger bushings, as well as the Whiteline rear subframe lockdown bolts. If you missed that, it'll be linked in the description below. But today we're getting to what we failed to get to last time, which is getting this SuperPro kit of STI aluminum control arms installed in the front end, as well as the Whiteline roll center correction kit. So without wasting any time, let's go ahead and just jump right in. All right, one thing that I haven't shown you guys, last summer, towards the end of the summer, it was actually more like fall time, driving to work and there was a rock in the road that my headlights didn't light up until it was too late to try to swerve or anything. And I really did a number on this DC Sports brace. It is bent slightly upward, really not that much at all. Visually, you can kind of see it's bent up ever so slightly, but luckily, it took the brunt of the force here, and that rock didn't continue back and hit the downpipe too bad. You can see some of the heat wrap here is chipped up where it bounced off the downpipe, and then it skittered off under the underside of the car over there on that side. So really just the casualty here is this front bar, and it's just this big old dent in it here. Appears as though this bar is not available anywhere anymore. It was kind of a no-name bar. I'd never heard of this brand prior to buying it, but it was cheaper than like the Megan Racing or the Cusco branded bars. For now, we're going to keep this on there, but I do think specifically just because of this big dent in it, we are going to replace it, but it's got to come down anyway to install these control arms. So let's go ahead and get this brace down out of there. So yeah, I didn't want that to happen, but it's just kind of one of those things that happens if you own a Subaru that's got any amount of rust on it. These always will snap off in the center of this pinch point, leaving the back half in there. I'm going to wait to deal with that until we get these control arms out. I had to do it on my Forester, and you just have to be really careful going and drill those out. So that worst case scenario, if the broken part of the bolt doesn't start to come out after you drill it, you can re-tap it. But the trick is getting in there nice and straight with the drill bit. So you drill a straight hole, and it's going to be easier if we just have everything out of the way to drill that out, especially having this tie rod end out of here, because we're replacing those as well. So let's go ahead and just work on getting the rest of this control arm out. We'll do the other side, and then we'll go ahead and worry about getting those drilled out. All right, guys, so I'm definitely done for the night. You just saw the last bit of what I finished up. I got the driver's side tie rod end off there. I did the passenger side as well. I didn't film it just because I'm starting to get a little tired of being out here, and it's the same exact thing as this side. But what a load of chaos I ran into. If you were paying attention when I went ahead and switched to the time lapse and started getting the control arm off on this side, you'll have noticed that I forgot to pull the pinch bolt out before I threw my puller on there, and it just pulled the ball socket, or the ball out of the socket, and it left the socket cap right up inside the knuckle there. So that took me quite a while to figure out. So that's what ended up getting pulled out with my puller, leaving just the socket up there inside the knuckle. You can see what I did. I was able to get a pair of vice grips around it this way, and I was able to spin it. And then once I got it spinning, I just was able to fit my angle grinder up in that opening for the two pieces on the knuckle for the pinch bolt, slid the angle grinder blade in there, and then just sort of cut little pie cuts into it, and was able to hammer those little pie cuts in, and then just kind of wrestle this thing, and was able to finally work it out. And then, as I had explained earlier, the threaded halves of both pinch bolts on both sides snapped off. It's pretty common in my area where I live for that to happen. I've always had good luck in the past with drilling them out. One of two things happens. Either you start drilling it out and then the drill bit will catch the little bit of bolt that's still in there and then spin after you drilled the cord out, and then spin the threads out, and then you get real lucky that way, or you just drill it all the way out and then re-tap it, which is what I attempted to do on this side, but I didn't drill it and tap it straight, so I couldn't, when I fit the bolt in this way, the bolt wouldn't actually line up with the threads on this side. You can still kind of see the threads that I cut there. So what I ended up doing, and it's what a lot of people end up doing, so you don't have to spend money on new knuckles, especially these earlier 02 to 07 WRXs that don't have bolt-in wheel bearings. They have pressed-in wheel bearings. Surprisingly enough, if you wanted a factory knuckle, they're about like $500, which is pretty ridiculous. There are aftermarket companies that I probably wouldn't be too worried about going with. It's just a hunk of steel, really. You can pick them up for like $70, $80. But the bearings are something you really kind of want to go genuine on. And then just for the inner bearing in there, a kit with both seals and everything, that's $100 to $150, and then that's still reusing your spindle with the wheel studs on it. So I was looking at, $300, $400, $500 if I wanted to decide to pull the trigger and just get new hubs, which I really didn't want to do. So what you can do is just get on this side, find a drill bit that's the same diameter where the shoulder of that OE bolt goes through here, drill it all the way through, and then you'll just have to order longer bolts and put a nut on the other side. It's a very common thing to do, so you don't have to worry about buying a brand new knuckle. I just jumped on eBay. I bought some grade 8, technically class 10.9 if you're talking metric. Some class 10.9 stainless. Actually, no, I couldn't find them in stainless, but either way, it's not a big deal. But I think I went with 70 millimeter long bolts. That'll give me plenty in length. I just didn't want to short myself and get a bolt that was too short. So worst case scenario, we can cut some off the end. But those are in the mail, and that's pretty much why I'm going to call it quits here today. So yeah, I normally don't like leaving the WRX or any vehicle on the lift for extended periods of time, but I really don't have a choice. So it's going to be a few days for me, but for you guys, it's just going to be as quick as a fade to black transition. And just like that, we're back. So let me just go ahead and show you a couple things I did in the week or so that it took to get from the last point to this point now. All I did was go ahead and take a wire wheel to get these sockets cleaned up and debris free. Both sides done pretty well. This side was really corroded, but eventually chipped everything out of there and got it cleaned up nice enough to get a new ball joint in there. And like I said last time, because we ended up not being successful in drilling and tapping and recovering this side that's normally threaded for the factory pinch bolt, we're going to be using a through bolt. So obviously we can't use this bolt. It doesn't reach all the way through. So I jumped online. I ordered some bolts. The ones I ordered, I thought I was being smart and going with some extra length. I ordered 70 millimeters. Turns out they were too short. I did end up using these. I'll show you what I had to do to make them work. I ordered some 60mm ones, but they're just not going to be here on time. So at least I'll have some bolts on hand. But the one thing you do want to make sure is you can see the shoulder on the factory bolt here. Even though you do use that pinch bolt to squeeze everything tight, the shoulder of this bolt sits right inside of the relief here on the ball joint to secure it as well. So I got these shoulder bolts here. Now, like I said, they were a bit too long, and where the shoulder started, I didn't have, the nut was bottoming out before it was squeezing the pinch bolt closed. So if you can see on there, kind of a difference right about where the tip of my thumbnail is beyond, I just retapped the shoulder to 10 by 1.25. Just retapped that a little bit further down and then chopped off the excess just so it didn't look ridiculous, and then just cleaned up that end on a 45 to give it kind of a factory edge on there so the nuts thread on nicely. So was able to make these 70mm ones work. Like I said, I ordered the other ones. They're just, I want to get to work today and they're not going to be here on time. So we got those ready to go. So we should have everything we need to get everything finished up today. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So I'm going to go ahead and install these ball joints now. You can do it both ways. You can install them in the control arm first or into the knuckle. It's really kind of just a preference. In my case, I'm just going to install these up in the knuckle. If you were doing this on a car that sees snow in the wintertime, you'd probably want to put a little anti-seize on the ball joint in case you have to replace it out again. It'll just make it come out of there nice and easy. This car doesn't see snow or winter anymore, so I'm not worried about it. And on top of that, it really doesn't see rain and all either. So I'm not going to bother putting any anti-seize on there. We'll go ahead and get our ball joint up in there. And we'll go ahead and tighten this down with a torque wrench. With the factory bolt through the threaded portion, it's not a lot. I want to say it's like 35 foot-pounds, maybe a little bit less. So we're just going to go ahead and tighten it down to that same setting. All right, so next I think I'm gonna go ahead and just get these control arm ends in here, or these tie rod ends in here. I left the jam nut in place because these tie rod ends are almost identical to the length of the factory tie rod ends. They might be just a hair shorter, but this will have me at least real close to where the alignment was set beforehand. And once we get these installed, I'll go ahead and then I just want to make sure we can free that jam nut up so that the alignment will be possible afterwards. And from the information I found, these Castle nuts, they're 19mm, they should be torqued to, I think it was like 35 or 37 foot-pounds. And then afterwards turned enough to line up the eyelet to get your cotter pin through. Well, I forgot to hit record on that one, but we got this tie rod end in, same exact way as the other side, no change over here, threaded it on, got the Castle nut on, torqued it down, turned it just a little bit more until we could get that cotter pin in there and bent around, so we're good to move on. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our control arms before we go ahead and mount them in the vehicle. So the instructions are good that they provided, but what you see in the images isn't exactly what you get in the kit. It says to put the larger washer, which out of the two would be this one here, but what they're talking about is the washer with the larger opening goes on first, otherwise your washer won't slide all the way over. So we'll put that washer on there. Now, as far as the orientation of their anti-lift bushing, it wasn't, obviously this side's going to slide on this way because this is tapered for the taper in the arm, but it wasn't 100% clear if it goes like this or if it goes like this. Looking at the instructions though, the picture that they included showed this as far as the orientation with the arm set up like this. with your caster. This is like a caster style bushing. That's why it's offset, pointed back and down like this. So that's how I'm gonna have them install it, because that's how it lines up with the picture in the instructions. Then we can go ahead and put the washer with the smaller hole on there, right on there. We'll install our nut, and honestly, I'll probably torque this nut down once it's installed in the car. And then the other thing I'm gonna do, luckily I did kind of like a dry fit. I just wanted to see how these would look. I was kind of excited to get them in while I was waiting on those pinch bolts to show up. I noticed that because of how long these adjustable end links, the stud is for these, you really can't get them in once these are installed in the car. So if you're doing this, I definitely recommend getting this end link on there first, and then we can slip it into the sway bar as we install it, and we've got that extra wiggle room. Otherwise, I looked at it a few different ways, and I really don't think it's possible to get these on there once the arm's actually installed in the car. And like the rest of this suspension setup that we've been doing, we've got brand new factory hardware to get this installed. So that's both arms installed. So let's go ahead. Just want to point out a few things and recap everything that we got done. First of all, I noticed after the fact, in hindsight, I forgot this installation grease. They don't, however, in the instructions tell you where they want you to put it. I'm assuming that you would just want to put it on like the faces of those rubber bushings where the washers meet and where the forward bushing slides up in the subframe. I really don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. If for some reason we get a whole bunch of squeaking from the suspension, we could always go ahead and take everything apart and grease it up. But then we got everything installed up in here. If you remember when I was talking about there was no notes on the orientation for this, I did notice when installing it, they'll only fit up in there one way. If you try to put it the other way, this bottom part won't reach all the way up in. I did think after I got it installed that that's why the R was facing down on this side. However, that's how I started over here with the L pointing down on this side, but that doesn't fit. So the L is pointing upward on this bracket. So yeah, just if you're installing these, the skinny bit of the bushing does face down, but it's not the end of the world to remember because this only will go up in there one way. The other thing too, as far as this rearward bolt, you probably do want to go ahead and get this on there and torqued before you install the arm because there's no room to get a socket and a torque wrench in here. So I just got a crescent wrench on there. If I remember right, these are pretty tight. They're like 140 foot-pounds. So I just really tightened it down. Worst case scenario, I have a feeling they probably make like adapter things that can come off of there so you can bring your torque wrench like out a little bit further off of there. We might be able to figure something out with that, but I'm confident that I've got those on tight enough. These are torqued down. These ones will be coming off to reinstall that cross brace. I've been looking at get a Megan Racing one in there, but I just don't want to spend a ton of money, so I've been trying to get a good deal on one, and so far I've been striking out. We got the lower ball joint castle nuts on here with the cotter pins in there, and I will reiterate that these end links, because these studs are so long, it's really hard to get those up in there. I really had to fight with this to get the end link in there first and then go ahead and slot everything else in there to get it lined up. But with some wrestling, we did manage to go ahead and get it in there. And I did go ahead and I just took the jam nuts for these tie rod ends and I just got some anti-seize and some lubricant on there and I worked them back about like 3/4 of an inch just to loosen up all these threads in case we need to make adjustments and then tighten everything back down. Now we do need to get it on the ground, and once it is on the ground, I will be loosening up these bolts right here for the front control arms, as well as, I know I don't have any light back here, but these bolts here for the rear trailing arms, because those really do need to be tightened up once the vehicle is down and the suspension's loaded, once it's in its loaded position. So yeah, we'll go ahead and when we get around to doing the alignment and this is on the ground, I'll loosen those up and then retighten them, retorque them when it's down and the suspension's loaded. So the only thing I want to do now is get this on the ground, because as I had mentioned before, they had said that these arms will move the wheel forward in the wheel well. So I want to get the wheels on, put this on the ground, and see if it visually makes any difference or not. And so this definitely puts my mind at ease. Visually, I don't notice any difference at all. Like I said, all of the listings that sell these control arms do say that it will push the wheel 2 inches forward in the wheel well, but the wheel looks perfectly centered to me, so I'm not sure exactly what that's all about. But if it did push the wheel forward, like I said, visually, you can't even notice it. And that's gonna go ahead and wrap this one up, guys. I'm super excited to get this out on the road when the time comes. It's still February right now, and although we haven't been really winter-like where I live, the roads are still way too salty to get this out, but we do have some things to do in the meantime. One is obviously it's gonna need an alignment now, and I do think I'm going to do a video for you guys of doing the alignment. I know I kind of touched on it real briefly in a previous video. I really didn't show you in depth how I went about it, and I do want to get some better tools, mainly some toe plates and things to be able to at least attempt. I do want to try. I want to see what I can do on my own and get this thing aligned. If not, one thing that I'm going to be doing before we even do the alignment is I did get new wheels for the car. I've got a new set of wheels that should really pull the look of what I was going for together for this car. And worst case scenario, the place that I'm going to be going to get the tires mounted to the wheels that does touchless tire mounting for wheels also has an in-ground alignment rack for cars that are lower than your average car that can't get onto an above ground rack. So worst case scenario, I could ask them to do the alignment as well. But for today, that's about all we're gonna be able to do. So be sure to keep an eye out for the next video with the WRX. which is gonna be sorting out those wheels. We've got a couple little custom things we need to do, and then I need to order tires and get the tires mounted and everything like that. And then after that, we'll be getting the alignment done, and then hopefully that will bring us to spring when we can get this thing out on the road and see how everything feels. So as always, guys, if you like the video, be sure to hit that like button. Feel free to leave a comment below, and if you're not subscribed already, please consider subscribing. Thanks.